Yo, welcome back to Eat, Sleep, Breathe, Hoops with your boy, Nikki P. Y'all know what this is, man. Yo, look, I want you to close your eyes for a moment and picture the perfect dunker. What do you see? Perhaps the sheer, terrifying power of a young Shaquille O'Neal backboarding the rim to dust? Maybe you see the balletic grace of Michael Jordan, tongue out, seemingly floating in defiance against gravity. Or perhaps you see the explosive raw athleticism of Vince Carter, leaping over a 7-foot-tall Frenchman for an Olympic dunk that shook the world. These are the names that instantly come to mind in the greatest dunker of all time conversation. But today, I want to introduce you to, or perhaps reacquaint you with, a phantom, a legend who operated in the shadows of the 1980s, a player whose very nickname sounds like a comic book superhero, Dr. Dunkenstein. And I'm here to make the case that not only does he belong in that elite pantheon of dunkers, but that relative obscurity is one of the great injustices in basketball history. Let's start at the beginning. Darrell Griffith was born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky. Basketball wasn't just a pastime there, it was a religion. And young Darrell was a devout follower. He wasn't a child of privilege. He honed his game on the city's tough playgrounds where style points were just as important as the final score. It was there at Shawnee Park and other local courts that the foundation of Dr. Dunkenstein was poured. He wasn't just learning to score, he was learning to perform. This talent exploded into the public conscious at Louisville's Male High School. Griffith wasn't just a star, he was a local phenom. His high-flying acts above the rim were so far ahead of their time that they became the stuff of local legend. He led his team to a state championship, and it was clear to everyone in Kentucky that a once-in-a-generation athlete was in their midst. Naturally, he stayed home, committing to the University of Louisville under the charismatic and demanding coach, Denny Crum. This is where the legend truly went national. In 1980, Griffith, the team's undisputed leader, propelled Louisville Cardinals to the NCAA championship. In the title game against UCLA, he was magnificent, scoring 23 points and cementing his legacy. He won nearly every National Player of the Year award, including the Wooden Award. But it was during this time that his nickname was born. Inspired by the funk album, Dr. Dunkenstein by Parliament Funkadelic, a local DJ bestowed the name upon him, and it was perfect. He wasn't just Darrell Griffith anymore. He was a scientist of the slam, a master of the aerial arts. So what made him such a phenomenal, elaborate leaper? Let's break down the anatomy of his flight. First, the physical gifts were unparalleled. He stood 6'4", and in the world of high flyers, that's not exceptionally tall. What he possessed was a combination of a sprinter's speed and a vertical leap that was measured notoriously at a staggering 48 inches. To put that in perspective, that's on par with Michael Jordan and Vince Carter. Crazy, right? He had explosive, powerful calves that acted like coiling springs, but it wasn't just the height, it was the hang time. Griffith seemed to defy physics. He would elevate and then he would just stay there. This hang time wasn't an illusion, it was a product of his incredible core strength and body control. He could take off from the dotted circle in the lane, and by the time he reached the rim, he had executed a series of maneuvers in mid-air. And that leads to the second point, his style and his versatility and creativity. This is what separated Dr. Dunkenstein from the mere mortal jumpers. He wasn't just dunking, he was performing in midair, an aerial ballet. He was known for his spectacular, often reckless tomahawk jams. He would cock the ball back with one hand, his body forming a majestic C shape in the air, and then unleash it with violent authority. He perfected the alley-oop not as a simple catch and finish, but as a theatrical event. He would control his body, double clutch, or switch his hands mid-air. He was doing things in the early 80s that would be headline news on ESPN's Top 10 today. He was an elaborate leaper because every dunk was a story, a narrative of ascent, suspension, and emphatic conclusion. The Utah Jazz drafted him second overall in 1980, and he immediately won Rookie of the Year. His NBA highlight reels are a treasure trove of aerial artistry. So with all this talent, this iconic nickname, and a championship pedigree, why is Darrell Griffith so unheard of today? The reasons are a perfect storm of bad timing, market size, and career trajectory. First, the era. The NBA in the early 80s was not the global marketing juggernaut it is today. Games weren't broadcast nationally every night. There were no YouTube, no social media, no Sports Center on a constant loop. If you didn't play in a major media market like New York, LA, or Boston, your highlights were often confined to local news and the occasional CBS broadcast. Playing for the Utah Jazz meant being in one of the league's smallest markets at the time. Dr. Dunkenstein's greatest works of art were often performed in a near-empty gallery. Crazy. Second, the team context. For the first part of his career, the Jazz were just flat out not good. They were a struggling small market team. While Griffith was putting on a show, the team wasn't winning, and national attention follows the winners. By the time the Jazz became a powerhouse in the late 80s and the 90s, the spotlight had shifted to the twin titans of the era, Magic Johnson's Showtime Lakers and Larry Bird's Celtics. Then, of course, along came MJ, who swallowed the entire basketball universe whole. Griffith was a shooting star that flashed brilliantly just before the supernovas took over. Third, and perhaps most crucially, injury. In 1985, at the absolute peak of his athletic powers, Griffith suffered a devastating stress fracture in his foot. He missed the entire season. When he returned, he was still a very good player. In fact, he reinvented himself as a deadly three-point shooter, which would have been perfect for today's game, and he led the league in three-point makes one year. But the explosive, otherworldly leaping ability was never quite the same. Dr. Dunkenstein was, in a very real sense, grounded. The prime of the greatest showman was cut tragically short, just as the NBA's popularity was about to take off and explode. So we return to the central question. Is Darrell Griffith one of the greatest dunkers of all time? My opinion leans decisively and emphatically toward the yes side. We cannot judge a legacy solely on its longevity in the spotlight. We must judge it on its peak, on its innovation, on its impact on those who witnessed it. And at its peak, Darrell Griffith was a breathtaking dunker, one of the most breathtaking dunkers the game has ever seen. He wasn't just a dunker, he wasn't just a leaper, he was a pioneer. Before Jordan had his first commercial, before Dominique Wilkins was dubbed the human highlight film, there was Dr. Dunkenstein soaring through the air in the American Basketball Association and the NCAA, bringing a playground flair to the professional game. He was the bridge between the aerial artistry of Dr. J and the high-flying era of the 80s and the 90s. His combination of a 48-inch vert, breathtaking hang time, and an audacious creative flair placed him in the highest echelon. He wasn't just jumping high, he was performing with style and a power that was unique. He is the forgotten prototype, the blueprint for the high-scoring, high-flying shooting guard that would later become the standard. Darrell Griffith may not have had the global fame of Jordan or Vince Carter. His highlight reel may not be as widely circulated, but to the connoisseurs, to the historians of the game, and to anyone who was lucky enough to see him play in his prime, the title is undisputed. He was a doctor, a scientist, a master of his craft. He wasn't just a great dunker, he was Dr. Dunkenstein, and it's time we put some respect on his name. And this has been Eat, Sleep, Breathe, Hoops with your boy, Nicky P. Make sure y'all tap in, like, comment, subscribe, share, all that good stuff, man. Do your homework on Dr. Dunkenstein. Watch this video, watch some other videos, and go see how much of a high flyer he was, man. And until the next time, peace.